It's our pleasure to welcome now Senator Josh Harkins. He serves District 20, that's Rankin County, and he is the ever so powerful chair.
Ever so lucky.
Some days you wonder about that, but he is, as we would refer to, he's a numbers guy. He's the one that makes sure that we got enough money coming in to operate the government, to serve the people, and of course, front and center is the tax legislation, HB 1, which passed the House. It was traveled down the hall there to the Mississippi State Senate, and you guys are investigating that and diving into those details now. What's going on? Let me just hand it over to you.
Good afternoon, Gerard. First, let me say my condolences to the SuperTalk family on Mr. Gallo's passing. He was a man unlike many others. I remember the first time I interviewed with him. It was kind of daunting coming up here first time, but he was a very respectful man. We had some great conversations. He called it like it was, and he's going to be missed.
No doubt. Yeah, appreciate that.
Yeah. Look, I think first I want to say that I commend the House on making proposals like this and other various topics that we discuss year in, year out in the legislative process. We come in every year, one, to pass a budget, but two, to try to make things more efficient, better for the citizens of this state, and put us in a position to be more prosperous and grow and provide the things that the government's supposed to provide, and do so at a very efficient rate. And I think one of the things that we do sometimes is we come in and we're trying to come up with ways to make things better. And I think if you take a look, a snapshot of what we've done in the past 10, 15 years since Republicans took over the House and the Senate, or the House particularly, we've made great strides in our state. I mean, we have eliminated income tax down to right now we're at 4.4%. We've cut the franchise tax. We've passed numerous business tax proposals. We've increased funding to education, increased teacher pay. We've made significant investments in infrastructure across our state, in roads and bridges, along with water and sewer and infrastructure. So we have done a lot of things over the past 10, 12 years, I think, that have put our state in a better place. And I think you're seeing the fruits of that by the economic activity we've had in our state, the businesses that are located here, the huge announcements recently last year with the SDI in Columbus, the Amazon Web Services, the battery plant in North Mississippi, the battery plant that just located over in Meridian. So I think you're seeing significant capital investment in our state because of the steps we've taken over the last 10, 12 years. And we've done so in a responsible manner, and it's paid off. I think what we want to do going forward is continue that trajectory of being responsible and making the cuts where we can, and making the investments in our state where we need to. And doing that is, it's a two-sided coin. There's, unfortunately, I don't get the luxury of just looking at cutting taxes. I have to balance the budget. I have to work with what's left on the other side of the coin to provide the services that the citizens of the state expect and want to be need to be performed. And so anytime we're looking at tax cuts, we look at ways to kind of give a little bit back where the burden is not so much on the citizens of this state, but all the while maintaining our education funding, maintaining our roads and bridges, maintaining the things that our citizens expect out of government. And so it's a double-edged sword, and it cuts both ways. So we're studying it hard to make sure that we're doing things in a prudent, responsible manner, because the last thing we want to do is come back and have to, upend everything because we took off too much, or we didn't think about certain things. I mean, there were decisions made in the 90s and the 80s. The 87 highway plan, great plan, great idea, didn't index it. That was a problem. So in the PERS situation in the 90s, when they went back and ultimately changed PERS, that we're looking at 25 years later, the effects of it. So the decisions, I don't take it lightly. The decisions that we make are not something that's going to impact this year or next year. It's going to impact the next 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 years. And I want to make sure that we are doing things in a manner that is responsible, and we're being very thoughtful about what we're putting in place in policy and making sure that we're thinking about everything.
So I'm just going to ask you straight up,
Yeah.
Senator, do you have any specific objections philosophically, let's just put it from that, or from a just from a policy perspective of eliminating the income tax?
I do not. I think people can have similar goals but have completely different paths to get there.
Okay.
And that's, I think, what you see right now is there are the same objective, but we have different measures and different ways of achieving that goal.
Okay.
And that's a difference of opinions, and that's fine. That's why we're here. That's why
sure.
You have two chambers. That's why they're set up the way they are, and they check our side, we check their side, and hopefully by the end of the day, when you have a product that comes out and is presented to the governor, it's been very well thought out, vetted, and it's a good policy. So,
to those who say, Senator, that want to see the income tax eliminated, I mean, there's several objections. You've heard them all.
Yeah.
You and I have talked about them a lot, in fact, offline as well. To those who say, hey, why do we need to increase sales taxes on fuel, which is a feature of the House bill now, the sales tax imposed on fuel, increasing the sales tax on all goods that are presently subject to the 7%, full 7% state sales tax, but are not grocery items. That goes to 8.5%. You know what I'm saying. We've got an increase here, a decrease there on groceries, an increase on fuel taxes. To those who say, well, why can't we just cut spending and just eliminate the income tax today?
That's a great question. Let's talk about spending.
Okay.
I mean, there's a lot of things that you've kind of asked there that you could go down a
Sure.
couple of different rabbit holes. Let's talk about spending. Our budget this year is $7.24 billion. How does that break down? $3.8 billion of that is in education, our public schools, our community colleges, and IHL. Between Department of Human Services, Child Protective Services, and mental health, all those which have been under federal lawsuits or ideas that the feds are coming in and they're watching what we're doing, we're spending almost $1.1 billion a year on that. And that's not going down. That's actually, I mean, if you look at all the things going on, it's taking more money and more services to keep the feds off of us.
Yeah.
You talk about mental health, $250 million a year. You're not cutting that. I mean, we're spending more money on it. We just built a forensic unit to help 81 beds to house people. And I think you talked about on your show, and we've all commented on how there are some people that they don't need to go to jail. They need to have some mental help. And that's what this facility is going to do. So we have to staff it. That's going to take more money. You look at corrections. We all want corrections. We all want facilities to house people that are committing violent crimes and do not need to be in civilized society. That's about $420 million. Our debt service is $422 million this year. You're not going to not pay your debt. So that alone right there, those few items comes up to about a little over $6 billion. You have less than $1 billion to fund the rest of government. $1 billion. Our income tax is $2.2 billion. So are you going to get rid of the Supreme Court, our Department of Agriculture, DEQ, our AG's office, wildlife, marine resources, Department of Finance Administration that oversees all of our buildings and payroll, Department of Revenue, our Mississippi Development Authority that's done great work and brought in these companies, our Secretary of State, Treasurer's Office.
Did you mention Medicaid? I may have missed that.
Medicaid was in the
spending.
DHS, CPS,
Okay,
and
gotcha.
Medicaid, about $1 billion, almost $1.1 billion.
So
on that.
I've shared it before on the show. I know you have this committed to memory, etched in your brain. Just in terms of the spending, consumption of our dollars. It's education, Medicaid, corrections, debt service, and kind of everything else, right? Is that a good way to describe
Corrections,
it?
debt, mental health, your DHS, CPS, those agencies. Yes, I mean, that's it. And those are, I mean, there's, to people that think that there's just this largesse of fat in government, I don't know that that's completely true. Now, there may be areas you find little bits and pieces of stuff that we can try, and we always look at that. That's why we have hearings to do this, for Appropriations Committee to go through these things. But I want to also go back to, in 2016, when we did the first tax cut, that took 10 years to implement, and that was a $300 million tax cut. 10 years. Then we did another tax cut that was over 4 years that was $500 million. That was used out of the excess, mainly from COVID, I would submit to you, to absorb that. But we don't have the luxury of having that type of growth right now. I mean, our revenues, everything that's indicating and what's going on, we've been pretty measured on keeping our spending in check all through this process. That's why we've had the large one-time money reserves.
Let's continue on the other side
Absolutely.
with Senator Josh Harkins. I is pleased to have Senator Josh Harkins. He's chair of the Senate Finance Committee. We're talking about taxes. That has been an item that has sort of headlined the list the last 3 or 4 years in the legislature, and that's honestly because the state of Mississippi has enjoyed really good financial experience, and we are producing surpluses every year.
And I think that's a byproduct of being lean on your appropriation side.
Yeah.
We didn't grow our appropriations to match our revenues. We kept kind of true to our form and stayed lean, and that's what produced the overage. And that one-time money it has been used, and I think the thing that goes unnoticed is and unappreciated is the fact that we've used cash to pay for things instead of bonding and borrowing money on the state credit card. In 2020, we were about 4.6 and some change, a little over 4.6 billion in debt. After this year, we'll be about 3.6 billion. We paid off $1 billion in general obligation debt, and not authorized really any new bonds for spending on projects, and we've paid cash for a lot of projects. We've invested, in the last 2 years, I think almost $700-800 million in MDOT and infrastructure spending, and also in the projects that we put out into the communities across the state. Lots of road, bridge, water, sewer maintenance spending, which is good for economic development.
Okay, so. Back to it's $2.2 billion. We have two primary sources of revenue to fund general fund expenditures in the state: sales taxes and then income taxes.
Sales and use tax and income tax.
Well, I was just looking at the 2.8 from sales, 2.2 roughly from personal individual income taxes, and then we've got corporate income taxes, use taxes, $400 million or so, I think.
A little bit more that goes to the general fund. Yes.
Yeah. And then we've got corporate income taxes, which are relatively small, to sales taxes and then individual income tax.
Yes.
From a ranking perspective, sales taxes, individual income taxes, use taxes,
use tax, and corporate
tax.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay.
And there are other gaming, all these other. There are a couple of small
amount of money
revenue, sources.
Income taxes currently account for almost 30% of total revenue.
Correct.
Right, 29%, something like that. And we're on track with respect to sine die estimates in the individual income taxes, I believe.
It's actually grown about 3 or 4% year over year. Corporate income tax is what's down substantially. It's about $140 million below this year. And sales tax, I think, is relatively flat.
Right. Year to date, I think, according to...
we're about $80 million under our estimate.
$80 million, right. That's the latest report from LBO. So the question is, why can't we just eliminate the income taxes today, which means we no longer have $2.2 billion coming in to the general fund, and just make that happen and offset that with spending? You just went through a lot of the spending and how the money is divided and appropriated in the general fund, and a lot of the things that the legislature has accomplished with respect to funding of various needs, such as transportation. And then we got this PERS sort of Damocles kind of hanging over our head. But a lot of people just have this feeling, Senator, that, there's all kinds of fat and waste in government and we can go get rid of it. Now, I'll point this out. You're aware of this. The state auditor engaged an outside party, Boston Consulting, to come in and review. They're a consulting organization that has such a practice area where they review government spending, and they'll come back with their findings and report areas where waste can be eliminated. Candidates for that. I didn't know till yesterday in the rather contentious hour and a half hearing with the Senator Polk and the state auditor, that the RFP actually included a certain level, a certain value that they had to find and had to guarantee they would find in order to be awarded. I'm not sure if you're aware of that.
I heard about that.
And they came up with $350 million. So here's where I'm going.
Yeah.
We had an outside party that are subject matter experts in cutting fat out of government said, yeah, we found $350 million. Now, my experience in dealing with consultants like that is you could usually take their findings and half it at best.
Yeah.
That sounds good, but it's not practical. And when you see the other side and you learn the other aspects of it, okay, it sounds good, and you met your contract requirements by identifying, but we can't really do that. But let's just say 100% of that is true. Well, now we still got to find
less than 1%. That's less than 1% of the income tax.
Right.
Every 1%, according based on 23 tax returns, 1% of the income tax is worth $407 million to cut.
What? Not 1%. It's 2.2 billion.
But that was on the higher income tax rate. So you're looking at not on 4%. You're looking at if you had it up to.
I see what you're saying. The percent of the income tax rate.
Yes.
Income tax rate. Pardon me. I talked about a percentage of the total revenue.
And every year that grows because you're having growth in income tax.
Gotcha.
So that rate just kind of gradually grows as you go further down the road. But based on the percentage of what 23's tax return was. And I guess that was
4.
That was 5 because 4.7 was last
23
year.
23 was 5. 24 was 4.7.
So 5
is 4.4.
It was based on 5.
Yes, 5.
So you're looking at $407 million per 1% of the income tax.
I got you.
But it doesn't even cut 1%.
But so let's just say that we were able to eliminate all $350 million in just terms of absolute value of dollars. We still need another $1.8 billion
You've
to
cut
make the numbers work.
0.8% of the income tax by eliminating that $350. It's
nothing, and that's
small.
Assuming that all of that is doable. That 100% of it could be eliminated.
I've said this on your show before, and I think we've talked about the anomaly that COVID was in the sense that that year we cut budgets 5%. We dipped into the rainy day fund a little bit. I mean, it was we were up $200 and something million in February of that year, and then March numbers came out, and I think we were down 60. I mean, it just dropped off the face, and we had to make a lot of cuts, drastic cuts. We cut every budget, education, all of them, and dipped into the rainy day fund a little bit. But since then, there was so much federal money that came to the state, that came to individuals. I think it was like $33 billion that got pushed into the state over 2 years, and $12 billion of it went to individuals. Didn't come to the state, didn't go to state agencies, counties, cities. It went to individuals in our state through EIDL, PPP, disaster assistance, the awful unemployment that was abused and caused a lot of the headaches I think that we see today.
By hundreds of billions nationwide.
Yes, nationwide. I mean, not that it wasn't needed, but at the level it was administered, I think was a total scam and upended a lot of the logistics in our country through people just not going back to work, frankly. But that caused a lot of influx of revenue, and I think that's where you see the anomaly that happened in 21, 22, 23 with all the influx of money and it's still being spent. But we're getting back to normal times, I would say. And normal times with inflation, the cost of inflation hits government just like it hits your house. I mean, our services that we use, they go up year over year. So it costs more money to do the same thing that you're doing the year before. And while we should look for areas to save money, and I appreciate the report, but like you said, half it at best, and try to figure out for whatever reasons, for pragmatic reasons, or why things are done a certain way, that's still a small scale of what the income tax brings in, and how do you cut it? How do you eliminate it and do the things that you're supposed to do year in, year out? Yeah.
So I wonder. So since we paid the state auditor commissioned a third party to come in and find all these opportunities to cut spending, I wonder if they would come in and say, okay, you need to find $2.2 billion so we could eliminate the income tax. What would that look like? And by the way, we're not engaging you unless you guarantee, which is the way that RFP was structured. I learned that yesterday. I didn't know that. And unless you can find at least this much, so that's like sort of telling kids in an Easter egg hunt where the eggs are before they go out and hunt.
Well, you're not going to find $2.2 billion in a snapshot. I mean, there's just not $2.2 billion of fat to cut out of government spending.
Are you concerned, kind of switching gears a little bit about this, if we fully eliminate the income tax, we're really relegated to one primary source of revenue.
Yes.
That's sales taxes.
That's sales tax. And in COVID, that would have been devastating.
Right. Because people weren't spending money.
Yeah. I mean, everything was shut down. Businesses were shut down. Now it came back afterwards, but what do you do in the interim?
So I guess what I'm saying is, and no, I hear you, and I think that's a concern, is that, okay, we only got this one source now, and the only way we could cover our expenses is if people go out and spend more money.
Correct.
To generate more sales taxes to offset loss of income tax. Well, I did the math on that. You may have come up with a different number. I determined that they'd have to spend about $18 billion a year more.
Yeah.
Which represents more than 20% of what they're currently spending to make this up.
Yeah.
Coming right back with Senator. You can stay?
Absolutely.
Senator Josh Harkins is in the Element Wealth studio. So, all right. So, I just want to clarify again. You're down. I could put you down for you'd like to eliminate the income tax with the caveat that it's got. I'm in the same boat. It's got to be methodical, responsible, prudent,
and doesn't wreck the budget. And we, I think that if we continue to look at the ways that we have been efficient with the budgeting process and not go crazy on spending, which we haven't, I would submit. I mean, we've been spending on priorities. I mean, last year, I think we put $270 million in a new education funding formula. That calls for $40 million a year, every year, additional money. I mean, there's things that we've made priority that call for spending increases.
Yeah.
And that's what we've prioritized. And if the people would rather us not spend money on education and stick it somewhere else, they'll let us know at the ballot box next election cycle. But I think you ultimately want to I want to lessen the burden on working folks.
Okay.
Absolutely. And eliminating and bringing down the income tax rate is a goal that a lot of us share. Some people don't have that view, and that's fine, but I think that we have a different path of getting there than our friends, and that's okay. That's why we come down every year and try to come up with good policy and see what gets back. But look, regardless of what happens this session, I mean, taxes are getting cut this year and taxes are getting cut next year. And anything that passes this year wouldn't go into effect until after next session. So
that's right.
You could theoretically, if the House passed this bill and we passed their bill next year, it would do the same thing that it does if you passed it this year. So there's not this urgency that something has to be done this year, but we can plan and see how things are going. And look, after December's revenue numbers, we'll have January's here pretty shortly. We'll have a good idea of how spending finished the year. So that's a good indicator of what things are looking like. So hopefully we'll have some good news.
And just to reiterate for the folks out there, you're the personal income tax in the state of Mississippi in 2023, we eliminated the 4% bracket, and basically that meant we had one bracket, 5%, all taxable income above $10,000, and then that decreased to 4.7% for 2024. So to the folks out there, you're getting all your data together to prepare your tax return for the tax year, not the fiscal year, the tax year 2024 right now. Your income is going to be taxed at 4.7.
4.7.
Based on action taken 2 years ago, in this year, taxable year 2025, your income will be taxed at 4.4. Mm-hmm. Next year, 4%. The bill from the House would then take that down to 3% effective 2027. As it stands right now, it terminates, based on law in place right now, at 4% for tax year 2026 and beyond.
You would have to pass another bill to extend any more cuts to the personal income tax.
So I'll point this out. You may or may not agree, and that's fine. We already have a fairly low tax burden relative to the rest of the country. It makes it especially hard under those circumstances to cut even more taxes.
I do agree with you.
Okay.
I mean, I think most people, if you ask most people what is a burden tax-wise, they'd say your federal taxes.
No doubt about it.
I mean, all day long.
All day
twice
long.
on Sunday.
Absolutely.
Federal taxes are burdensome, and I hope Congress gets something passed to pass the Trump extend the tax cuts, and hopefully they will further them, but make further cuts. But, that's the burden that I hear most people complain about.
No doubt.
Is that. But, I mean, look, if you're going to lay everything out on the table, you've got two levers to pull to raise money. That's your sales and use tax.
In the state level.
And state level, yeah. Your gas tax. You have grocery taxes. You could cut income tax. You could cut personal income tax. That's what's all being considered in this smorgasbord of tax jargon.
That's right. And then you've got the good people in Mississippi who are retired, whose income's not subject to income tax. And they're looking at this, and they're looking at the legislature and saying, wow, you guys are helping the people who are actually producing income, and their income's being taxed because they're actively working. What are you going to do for us retirees?
Yeah.
That's the question. And it's kind of difficult to do something for them because they already don't pay any income tax.
Correct. They paid income tax, and I get that, but I think that's where the grocery tax is part of it. That provides a benefit to everybody, and so that's what we're looking at. Look, we've probably morphed about 15 different formulas of tax policy options in front of us, from not raising anything to raising a little bit to looking at how it impacts all these different. Because once you pull one lever, you got to pull another one, and what we want to provide is a plan that provides immediate tax cut.
Okay.
Immediately upon the following year, it provides a net tax cut to the citizens of the state, and it's done so in a responsible manner that does not wreck the budget.
Gotcha. Let's clarify this as well, Senators. That there's this rather pronounced fear, especially among retired folks who don't pay income taxes, as we just shared, that, man, if the legislature enacts elimination or even reduction of income taxes, they're going to raise property taxes. And let's clarify the where property taxes are, who gets that revenue. Not the state.
This county and city.
Right, not the state. That's the point. Yeah. So if we cut sales taxes in any way, or income taxes, which are the two main sources of revenue to the state, that really doesn't have any bearing on property taxes, except in as much that if we make any changes in the sales tax diversion to cities that perhaps would decrease that, they may say, well, we got to get our money somehow. We may have to raise property taxes.
Yeah, and I think we've taken that into consideration in all of our different plans that we've looked at, is making sure that the cities are whole. If you reduce grocery taxes, you have to make sure the cities are whole. Now, a byproduct, this is the type of stuff that you have to really think about. You have to also consider, how does lowering the grocery tax affect TIF financing on projects all across the state? A lot of them are grocery store anchored projects, and there's a boundary of what the area that you can use funds to pay down these bonds that cities are essentially diverting their diversion to pay for. And if you reduce those rates, how does that impact your TIF financing? How are all these projects going to be impacted? And so, those are the questions that we're trying to make sure that we cover. I mean, there's a lot to tax policy. And look, I'm not going to be the smartest, claim to be the smartest person in the room at all, but that's why you take your time with this. You don't rush it. You make sure you're covering everything you can. We have a mutual friend that I'm going to be talking to here shortly that is heavily involved in TIF financing, and it's probably one of the foremost experts around here. And to make sure that if there is a problem, how do you rectify it? And how do you make sure that cities are not going to be punished, or developments are not going to be impacted that were based on that? I mean, even with MDA, job tax credits, these companies that we've brought in here, we've given them income tax credits that if they are LLCs or something, that you're reducing the income tax to anybody. There's still a corporate entity out there that's saying, hey, you made a deal with me that if I hire these people at this salary range, I'm going to get a rebate on their income tax. And now there's not one. Well, that's not my problem. That's y'all's. Y'all still owe me money. And it's akin to the grocery tax.
Yeah.
The income tax is a dollar for dollar cut. When you cut the grocery tax, you also have to put in not just the dollar that the actually cut is that you gave, but you also have to make up for the diversions that are lost to the cities, to all the other funds that have sales tax diversions tied to it, EEF, Department of Public Safety, all these different ones, or else you're cutting their budgets. So it's $1.30 to do a grocery tax. Well, if you eliminate the income tax, all of a sudden you've also got an additional expense with companies that have job tax credits, and these aren't small.
I got to tell you, I forgot about that. Continental Tire was one, right?
Yeah.
Had a big provision of their deal.
Absolutely.
Included a rebate based on jobs created and income taxes paid by their employees.
The inventory tax. We, quote, eliminated the inventory tax. We didn't. We just said you pay it at the local level, and then you take it as a credit on your income tax.
That's right.
Well, if you have no income tax,
you don't get the value of the credit. Yeah.
And some people's, that's...
Hadn't thought about that. The tax increment financing, just so the folks will know, this is a common tool used in economic development where cities primarily will go out and build certain infrastructure to support a project, and they finance that on future
revenues from sales tax.
And if you cut
generated.
all that, and you got usually what you go out and do is borrow money in advance to build and construct all those improvements, and then you wait on the taxes later to pay the debt. To service the debt, right? That's the model. Okay, tell us about the is there a DEI bill in the Senate? Can you talk about that?
Senator Boyd has a bill. It's I believe it's single referred to universities. It's refocused. It may not have hit the computer yet, but I know it's been submitted, and I believe it's single referred to universities. Because
there was some concerns about a double referred bill in the Senate as well, but
there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of bills filed.
Gotcha. But it looks like
I've
this
been looking
is the
at one bill for the past.
I hear you. That's
2
your
weeks.
area. Senator Josh Harkins has been our guest in the Element Wealth studio. Appreciate it, Senator.
Thank you, Gerard.
Thanks for coming on. Coming right back, folks. Final segment.